Fears of recession have eased this morning with the release of the latest growth figures showing the economy grew 0.1% in the final quarter of last year. The Chancellor says it's good news, but she isn't satisfied.
So, while growth is sluggish or even virtually flatlining, it was a better result than expected. Now, Housing Minister Matthew Pennycook joins us now. We know you've got big things, good morning, big things to talk about as regards housing, which I'm sure you're going to say is a driver for growth. But it's not looking good at the moment, is it? And in the short term, because a lot of your plans are much more long-term, we can't see, can we, where that's going to come from?
Well, there are good signs in the figures released this morning. Construction is up, for example, but absolutely we're not satisfied with these numbers. But on the other hand, Kate, we always knew that there was no silver bullet, no simple remedy to turning around 14 years of economic stagnation. We obviously had to come in when we were first assumed office, put the public finances back on a sound footing, address that black hole that we discovered. And then we've been absolutely focused on removing the regulatory barriers to growth. So in my own area, we overhauled in our first 6 months the National Planning Policy Framework, made it a pro-growth framework, took a new approach, to example, to Greenbelt land release. We're hoping that some of those changes are scored by the OBR in the forthcoming forecasts. But we know there's more to do. We've got to go further and faster. Again, in my own area, you'll see the Planning and Infrastructure Bill come forward in the coming weeks that will help streamline the delivery of infrastructure and homes. So, progress is being made, but there's a lot more to do, and we're getting on with the job. Just
to understand the announcement you're making today about potentially 100 areas being up to be a new town, will any of those new towns, will any ground be dug in this Parliament, or is this all for the long-term future? I know you want to build houses now, but the new towns, anything in this Parliament?
Yes. So we expect space to be in the ground on new town sites in this Parliament. Not in a huge number, Ed, you're absolutely right. These projects take a long time to get off the ground. They will start to deliver very high numbers in future Parliaments, because we're talking here of a scale of ambition like the post-war governments that built those 3 waves of new towns that are now home to millions of people. That is the sort of scale of ambition we're looking at here. So it will take time to feed through.
But we're also, Matthew, on those plans then, if there's going to be some digging this Parliament, we know the private sector will build homes, but we'll need roads and schools and hospitals and infrastructure. Is there any money set aside in this Parliament? Is there a pot of money to support the new towns?
Well, the financial investment that will stand behind those new towns will be confirmed in the spending review, as you'd expect. The government will obviously lay out how it intends to finance them. And we're also looking to the independent task force that we established to advise ministers on where the locations for these large-scale new communities to be, to advise us on the best funding options and how these places are delivered. Because they have got to be exemplary, well-designed places with the right infrastructure and amenities to support thriving communities. So that detail will all be to come.
But no money yet. In fact, the Chancellor's going to have to cut spending in the summer, and already there's no money.
No money yet, because we don't have the final report of the Independent New Towns Task Force that recommends sites for us. Ministers will choose from those sites. And then in the spending review, the government will set out how it intends to back these new large-scale new communities coming forward over the course of the Parliament.
I mean, no money in the sense that no money being allocated, but is there money at all from the government to put into this? Because, as you rightly say, they've got to be the right sort of towns, haven't they? Towns like Welwyn Garden City and those garden cities demanded huge investment from the government. Milton Keynes was a town that took a long time to become a place that people flocked to live in. It's a challenge, isn't it? Is there the money?
Well, let me just be very clear again. We have not announced new town locations yet. The independent task force is going to make a series of recommendations about where these sites should be.
Yes, I wasn't talking about where. I was talking about the construction of the community.
Absolutely. I'm just coming on to address that point. So there's obviously not specific funding allocated yet, given that we haven't even chosen the locations.
Yes.
But in the spending review, we'll stand behind that. But you're absolutely right. These places will require investment. But over the long term, just as the post-war New Towns programme did, we expect them to largely pay for themselves because we are talking about a different way to do development. This isn't just relying on private sector volume house builders to drip feed out homes. This is the state taking an active role, ensuring, for example, we can get in, assemble the land, master plan these sites, capture more of the land value uplift from development to ensure that that land value uplift, that public gain, goes into the infrastructure and amenities that will make these places thrive in communities.
But I think, Mr Pennycook, we're establishing here this is good for the long term, but this is going to have no impact on growth in our economy this year, next year, probably the year after. This is not going to solve the growth challenge this Parliament at all, is it?
I think it'll make a contribution over this Parliament, but the other part of our announcement today is that we're taking concerted and decisive action in the very short term through our New Homes Accelerator to unblock and accelerate development on stalled sites across the country. We announced, if you remember last year, 7 sites for support. They total potential delivery of nearly 30,000 homes. We've unblocked another about 10,000 homes through the department acting as a convener and leader with other government departments, with statutory consultees. And we're announcing today 3 new sites in Bristol, Scarborough and London to add to that programme. So we're taking concerted action on large sites, not just on new towns that will come forward in due course, but on large sites across the country to get development moving. And that will have a very short-term impact on the growth numbers.
Matthew Pennycook, good to talk to you this morning.
Thank you very much.